the end of October. Another month has gone by, and that means time to talk about some progress with my knitting projects. So let's dive into it. Yes, and I need to mention that we will be going trick-or-treating. Yes, the day this is posted. There will be trick-or-treating with maybe a dragon, maybe a triceratops. We'll see what costume she decides on. Oh, apparently a velociraptor now. We don't have that costume. We'll see. This may be a chaotic episode because we got toddler running around, we got two dogs running around, we're in a new location in the house. We'll see how it goes. Hey folks, if you're new here, I'm Dawn. This is Tangled Together, where I talk about my knitting hobby as well as the other things in my life that get all tangled up in it. Let's see if I can get through this without interruptions. I was planning on filming this while my kid was at school, but unexpected tummy troubles means that I'm doing double duty, so might have a toddler toddle through at some point. Let's talk about my finished object of the month, what I'm wearing, the CatKnit sweater. I am so pleased with how this turned out. It looked really good before blocking, but blocking definitely Oh, thank you. Kyrie also likes my sweater. Before blocking, it looked very similar, like blocking didn't make a huge difference, but it was just that finishing touch type thing that really evened out the color work. I didn't notice a whole lot of tension issues. I did go up the needle size like was suggested. It wasn't a huge jump up in needle size. I think it went from 2.75 up to 3 or 3 up to 3.25. So not a huge difference in those needle sizes, but I do think that helped just with the tension and everything. I might have been able to stick with the same needle size. I haven't really gone through to measure the exact what the difference is between this part and just the stockinette. But just looking at it, I don't notice much of a difference. And yeah, I tried to carry some of the longer floats, but after a while, I just kind of was if it's over 7 stitches, I'll carry it. But when I first started out, I think I was doing it was over 4, and I was that's too much. There are a couple spots in here, less so now that I blocked it, but pre-blocked, where you could see where I had kind of caught my floats. I think that's something I should look up a little bit more before I do my next big color work thing, is how to properly catch my floats. Because I was kind of just switching passing it over the current working yarn, but I did notice it changed if it showed through depending on which direction, and I was kind of switching back and forth just to help with yarn management. Maybe I shouldn't have been doing that. If you do a lot of color work, let me know how you catch your floats and all of that. I'm really happy with this. I love how lightweight this is as a fingering weight sweater. I'm getting a lot more wear out of it. I've worn it a couple of days at home. I wore it on a day that we went to the zoo for a Halloween thing, and then we went to a pumpkin patch afterwards, and it was great. I got a little bit warm in the afternoon, but it was breathing very well. The yarn so far has held up. I haven't noticed any pilling on it. And the arms were that when I first was wearing it, but now they've kind of shrunk up. I do push my sleeves up, so I think that's some of it, I've stretched it out this way. But it fits comfortably that way. I did do an Italian bind off on this 1x1 ribbing. I think that's my preferred bind off method. I actually have my Jenna sweater, that purple and white striped sweater. I didn't do an Italian bind off. It was before I learned the Italian bind off. I might actually go back and redo the sleeves on that one, because I noticed the sleeves don't spring back quite as much. yeah, I'm really loving this. I'm so pleased with how it turned out. And it has been a fun sweater to wear out because like people kind of notice it at first and are like, oh, that's a really nice sweater. And then like it clicks that it's cats and they're like, oh, that's really cool. So I like that it is like, it's clearly cats, but like from afar, it isn't as obvious as like if these were solid or something. It kind of from a distance is just a nice color work. Yes, really happy with this. I'll throw up some finished object pictures and video and stuff like that. I'm going to be wearing this all the time. I do think I am going to take a break from doing fingering weight sweaters for myself. I started this I thought it was January, it was actually February, so a little bit less time, but I started this back in February and I just finished it in September. Granted, I had a lot of like setting it aside and working on other things. All right, I'm back after getting the child some water. I also adjust some lighting stuff a little bit. So yes, as I was getting ready to say, I really like the weight of the fingering weight. I really like the like fabric weight that fingering weight gives me in a sweater. I think especially for living in coastal Virginia where it doesn't get all that cold even in the winter. It gives me something that I'm going to be able to wear a lot more often. However, it takes forever. So I think it's something that like maybe like one fingering weight sweater, if that, a year. And I do also want to do a couple of like short sleeve that might be some more of those like transitional weather wears. If you hear a little clicky clacky, that's Ripley pacing around as she always does. Hi, Ripley. Hello. You want up? Okay. Say hi. Can you get up high enough to say hi? Hello. Ripley has made her appearance. So yes, really happy with how it turned out. Would I make this again? I would if I didn't already have it. Like, I feel like this is one of those, like, one of this in my closet is enough. It is very distinct. This is the first circular yoke I've ever made, and I like it. I think I would actually prefer, like, more rows in the ribbing along the neckline, so it brought it in wide closer. I think it's one of those because it's a circular yoke, so you're taking your measurements off of your bust. I tend to size down based on the bust. Just my like shoulder to upper bust to bust measurements tend to match. Like shoulder and upper bust matches one size, and then I have to size up for my bust. And I'm okay with things being a little bit tighter around my bust to have it fit elsewhere. So I think that's one of those situations where the bust to other measurements just didn't quite line up. I've seen Breathing Yarn has talked about how she adjusts circular yoke to accommodate bust size a little bit. So I might look into that for doing any future circular yoke knitting, because I love the color work patterns that are circular yoke. So maybe it's that, or maybe it's adding like a kind of funnily turtleneck type thing to just bring this in. I feel like the sweater, looking at it, it starts here, and I feel like I would rather the neckline sit here. I'm fine with it being down this far in the front because I don't like things choking me, but I like it a little bit closer in here. Not that I dislike the sweater. I'm going to wear the sweater all the time. I think just that's something to keep in mind, and maybe for me to look at how can I make adjustments to a circular yoke so that I absolutely love every single part of it. Because the neckline is the only thing that I'm kind of like, it's not my favorite, but I love the rest of the sweater. I love the color choices I've made. This is knit up in Knitting for Olive Merino. This is the plum rose, dusty plum rose color, and then I always forget what the creamy color is. I will put the details for that up here. The toddler has monster trucks, and now our neighbors are having their lawn done. We're just gonna power through. So yes, I am so happy with how this turned out. I think the yarn worked up great. This was my first time using knitting for Olive. I like the merino. I think it's really great for color work because it is soft on the skin, but it still has like enough of that like toothiness that it kind of holds to each other. So I think it holds the color work really, really well, really nicely. The stitch definition is great, and I have heard really good things about how it's held up, which the amount of time that I put into the sweater, I don't want it pilling instantly. So I think this was definitely a little bit more expensive of a yarn investment. Not all that much, but definitely worth it to me to invest in something that is going to last me for years. And I will wear the hell out of it. Now that we've talked about the finished object, let's move on to, let's talk about some acquisitions before I get into works in progress, because I've started using the acquisitions. I'm missing a ball. So the acquisition that I made this month was for a specific project, and that was I bought a whole bunch of different colors. I've got a couple of them here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's actually a 5th one I forgot to grab, but it is this color. And this is all Knit Picks Modish Merino, which is a new yarn that they have. I kind of discovered it when I went to go order yarn for a project and was like, oh, this is new. Let me look at this. And I love the colors. It was in the weight that I wanted. And it's 100% merino. It is not super wash, but it is washable. So it's not like wash and dry super wash. But you can put it in the washer on like delicate and then lay flat to dry. So it's a little bit more, I think like that's nice as gifts, especially I'm using this for gifts, but also I like that for like sweaters. Like the colors on this, such bright, bold colors, which was why I went with these over some other ones. So let's talk about some works in progress, starting with Mom. Don't watch this section. Starting with this finished, actually this is a finished object. This is not a work in progress. This one is a finished object. And it is this really fun color work. I use the Pacific Doodle Company doodle base pattern, and then this is some of the doodles from the Alaska kit. So my folks are going to Alaska in the spring and had requested hats to wear for that. I do need to weave in the ends, but I love how vibrant the colors are in this yarn. It's really soft. I thought the merino would be nice. It's soft, so it's going to be like soft on their ears and forehead and all of that. It's going to be warm and provide like all of those great wool elements. So if it's a little wet, it will kind of help with that. And really pleased with how this turned out. I knit this up in about a week. You can kind of see it shoved on over my braids. Yes, I like it. So yeah, I did this one, and then I'm going to make one for my dad that has rockets, because he, rocketry is one of his hobbies. So I will have some rockets and stars in kind of matching colors. So actually the brim on his is going to be in this yellow, and then the kind of background color will be this red, with the teal and the blue and the yellow again for stars, and the white. I think the white's the rocket, or part of the rocket. So yes, I have that. That is kind of a like future plan work in progress. A bunch of my works in progress I haven't made any progress on. The sweater I'm working on for my daughter, have not done anything more. The socks, I think I've done like 3 more rows. And the hand warmer, I still need to do the thumb and second hand warmer for myself. What has been occupying my time this month is in this bag. And that is my book club cardigan. Now, if you've followed me on Instagram, you might know a little bit. This is how much of the book club cardigan I have done. This might not look like a whole lot for a month, and that's because I had to frog it. I got all the way to joining the fronts and back, had finished a ball with that, and then moved on to, had started a sleeve. And I went to double check something when I was adding an update into Ravelry and had a moment of like, did I make the wrong size? So I went back and double checked, and I had highlighted the instructions for the size 5, but I wanted to make the size 4. I tried to figure out if I could just continue with the size 5 and it would be a little bit more oversized than I wanted, but looking at it, I was like, okay, the size 4 gives me like 8 or 9 inches of positive ease, and the size 5 gave me over a foot of positive ease. And that was just too much, especially for what I wanted with this cardigan. So I made the decision to frog it and start over. This I have done in about a week. This is about a week's worth. I have done the entire back section, and I actually, needle stabbing me in the chest. I have picked up for the right shoulder. Now it did allow me, frogging it did allow me, I had messed up, I think like in this section with the moss stitch at one point. I like did an extra, I did like 3 rows instead of 2 and then switching. Hey, Carrie, don't drive on there, please. So that did allow me to go back and fix that. I also had a much better job. I don't know if it was the size difference between the 4 and the 5 or just how I picked up stitches this time, but I did have a much better job lining up the cable where it connects. See if you can see that. So it's hard to see at this point. I think it will be more obvious once I get a few more rounds in. And I did actually pick up the stitches for the right shoulder twice, because the first time I was like, I'm a stitch off with this lining up. So, hi Carrie, you wanted to show your monster trucks?
I want to go with you.
You want to sit with me? Can you say hi?
Hi.
Hi. Where was I before the toddler interruption? So yes, I did go back and pick up the stitches on this twice. I redid it because when I first picked up the stitches, this like line was 1 stitch off, and I was like, you know what? If I go back and I just shift a couple stitches where I picked up, it's not gonna like cause some weird bunching or stuff like that, but that will line up the pattern. Now, we did have somebody on Instagram recommend, who was it? Nancy Moore on Instagram reached out and suggested Allie of Supercraft Delicious has made the cardigan and didn't like how the diamond cables met at the shoulder, so she did a mod to add a cable between the front and back panel to match. And I went and I looked at it. I did really like that change as like an option, but I did like, when I knit up the first one that I frogged, I wasn't bothered with how the diamond cables met up, and I wonder if that's something that like maybe it shifts with sizing, because I did notice on the size 4 they lined up a lot better than they did on the size 5. That doesn't quite make sense because it's still the same chart. Maybe it was just how I picked up the stitches. But I did not find it bothered me how they met at the back. But that is good to know if you're making the book up cardigan. That is a modification you can go check out. I wasn't bothered to have to frog this because it has been a pretty fast knit. Before I realized I had been doing the wrong size, I did have the thought that I might be able to finish this in time for Thanksgiving. I don't think that's going to happen now. I think this is going to be a finished for Yule and Christmas and all of that cardigan. But who knows? Maybe I will fly through it this month again. And I really only knit on this and the hat that I showed you. I have been really kind of monogamous knitting on this project. And it's been a fun, like, I'm at the point where I pretty much have the chart memorized. I'm still printing out the chart and following it, more so I can mark, like, with the back increases and the shoulder increases, here's how many rows I need to go until the next increase, or how many rows that I need to keep increasing, and then in the case of the back, stop increasing. I just found that easier to keep track of than needing to constantly go back to the pattern and then also kind of be like, wait a minute, how many rows did I do the last one? I just printed it out and marked it on the printout of the main chart. And I will say, like, the way the pattern's broken up, you can't just print out the main chart on its own. It's not on its own page. What I did was I screenshotted the section of the page where the main chart was, and then I just printed that out so that it laid out twice on a piece of paper. And I usually just fold it in half and mark it with a highlighter as I go. I like using a highlighter to mark it rather than like a pen or marker, or like thick dark marker, because I can still see through the highlighter to see what the previous row was. I've found that has been really helpful with cables, more so with lace, to be able to see, like, what am I doing to help make sure that I'm lining things up correctly in the chart. Also, because I'm knitting size 4 instead of the size 5, I was starting to have a little bit of like, am I going to be running yarn chicken? I don't think that's going to happen with the size 4, because I already realized, okay, this, not all of this, but like about half of this remaining ball was used in the back portion, and I used less in the back portion, so I'm already going to have more yarn. It's going to be broken up a little bit more funny because I did like break it and stuff like that in the pattern, so I don't have as many full complete skeins, but that's fine with just a few more ends to weave in. Plans for November knitting, going to keep working on my book club cardigan, going to do the second of the color work hats for my dad. I also kind of want, I am pretty confident that I'm going to have lots of extra of this yarn, so I think I'm also going to make a color work hat for Kyrie. I did pick up the dinosaur doodle chart because Kyrie loves dinosaurs. More on that in a moment. And so I think I'm going to make her a little hat with a triceratops on it because she loves triceratops. They're her favorite. And yeah, I like doing these like color work hats. They knit up pretty quickly. I love the doodles. This is my first time working with the doodles, and I found them really easy. I also have a whole book of like color work patterns that I could also use. They're a little less like plug and play as the doodles. But those have been a really fun way to like customize, do the same pattern and customize it. I also 100% am at some point going to use those doodles on just like a Monday sweater for my daughter. Like I think I know how to easily work those into that pattern. So really, I think I'm glad that I picked those up. And also a good way to use up scraps potentially. You know, I did buy brand new yarn for these projects because I was getting it specifically to match some coats that my parents had. But with like maybe doing a sweater for my daughter, that might be something that I might go through and see like what are the leftovers that I have that I could use up, and find ways to incorporate that into the patterns. So yes. So those are my plans. I want to finish that sweater for my daughter. I just have to do the sleeves and then the ribbing on the neck. I just need to actually like put that back on the needles and work on it. So that might be one of those. That's it. That's what I'll do. I'm going to try and work on that one night a week, because I think if I do that, I can get that done in November, and then she can either start wearing it or I can hold on to it and it can be a Yule present. Maybe that's what I'll give her on the night we do the Yule cat stuff. That might be fun. Yes, that's what I will do. I'm also going to try and get that sweater done in the month of November. That's plenty. That's plenty. I'm sure I'll probably have some other like gift knits because we've entered that time of year. And I need to figure out what I'm gifting family members, friends, all of that. Oh, right. I was going to make stuff for her teachers. I need to add those into my plans and figure out how to do that. So really quick, let's talk about some non-knitting things with a quick insert with some Kyrie time. I got Kyrie the Dinosaur Dig KiwiCo Koala Crate. Do you want to tell people about it?
So, Mommy, open it and...
Well, no. You gotta just hold it up so people can see and just talk to the camera, okay?
So, you put all together to a dino bones and make a dinosaur.
Yeah? And what do you get to be while you're digging stuff up? Who are people that dig dinosaur bones up?
Paleontologists.
Yeah, she gets to be a paleontologist and dig up dino bones. It also came with a cute little, like, book and, like, Stegosaurus costumey thing. So, very good. Like, this kept her occupied for a good 40 minutes. Okay. Good 40 minutes this morning. She loves dinosaurs. Very, very good purchase. So if you got like a wee ones, I can recommend at least this first box. I'm not sponsored. KiwiCo, if you want to sponsor me, find my info in the description. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. I've been having fun digging these up too. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is what I've been reading this month. So I did finish Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil. I finished this about a week ago. Really good October read because it had that like spooky vampire stuff going on. I loved the way vampires are in this book. Like, it acknowledged vampires are in pop culture because it kind of takes place in our world. And there were some things of like, one of the characters was like running through of the like, okay, what are the things that like pop culture says vampires can do versus what can I actually do? Like, some of that lined up, but there were also some things that were a little bit different. So that was a fun, like, I really enjoyed the way the vampires were handled in this, and all of the main characters are vampires. Like, there's a lot of, like, there's so much sapphic vibes in this because they're all lesbians. But also, like, there's an interesting, like, it feels like it does deal with a lot of, like, abusive relationship, but also, like, how that trauma gets passed down. Thoroughly enjoyed this book. Highly recommend. Yes, just such a good book. I love V. Schwab. And then the book that I just started recently is I Got Abducted by Aliens and Now I'm Trapped in a Rom-Com, which the little blurb says, lions and dinosaurs and sexy aliens, oh my. And that is 100% this book. It's fun, a little bit of smutty stuff. I'm like 4 chapters in, so I don't know how smutty it's going to get. But it's fantastic. I was 100% sold on this book by reading the first paragraph, which said, Thick and Nugget, you evil bitch, stop murdering half the desert. I muttered from behind my camera. As expected, Thick and Nugget ignored my requests. And Thick and Nugget is a meerkat that the main character is researching. So yes, she's like biologist, anthropologist, studying these meerkats when she gets abducted by aliens as a lion is about to pounce on her and eat her. That's how the book starts, and then it goes from there. Really enjoying this. I will let you know next month what I think once I've finished it. There you go. I have a puppy who desperately wants some attention and probably to go outside, and a toddler who also probably wants me to stop filming. Hey, kiddo. So yeah, I'd love to know what you've been knitting this month. If you've got any projects that I have made that you are also making, or you've made that I'm planning on finishing, let me know. Are you in the book club Cardigan groupie? I was kind of trying to do this as the like Fish Girl Fall that Young Folk Knits has been doing a knit along, but I don't think I'm gonna make it in the time frame. But kind of like I'm doing it in the spirit of that. So yes. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye!